Well, once upon a time, I'd never even heard of the word floating. And I had a girlfriend that got bit by a mosquito and ended up with the West Nile virus. She was sick for like 3 years over that mosquito bite and that disease. And she told me a story. She said she had ran into an old lady that was from the community, and she says, "Honey, have you ever tried one of those salt tanks?" She goes, "You need to go soak your body in one of those salt tanks and do it for a while." So my friend, she researched the salt tank thing and found over in Denver, not Denver, but in Boulder, Colorado, a float center over in Boulder, Colorado. And she was from Grand Junction, so literally she would have to drive 4 hours just to get to the float center to float for 90 minutes. And she did it 3 times a week. And literally it changed her life. I mean, it was like it sucked the poison out of her, and the disease started disappearing, and her body, she started feeling better, and her skin color came back, and her body functions and her muscles started building again. And literally, she looked better than she did for the last 3 years that I'd seen her. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, what have you been doing?" And she goes, "I've been floating." And I'm like, "Floating? What the heck's that?" And she goes, "Oh, if you've never floated, you need to try it." So Hui and I, my wife, and I went back home. We were from Salt Lake, and I got back and I started researching float centers, and I found one that was, fairly well known in the valley, but there was very few float centers. We booked an appointment for the two of us, went in, and we couldn't buy a couples float package, so he forced us to buy a 3 float package. Well, that kind of locked us into having an extra float for some other time. All right, so we floated the first time, and I just literally, I didn't really care for my first float. I battled my mind and myself and everything for the full entire 60 minutes. And I can remember telling myself, "Look, I don't, this is 60 minutes of my life that I'll never get back." So I tried to keep a positive attitude about it, and I took my shower and got out and went outside, and my wife come out of her room, and literally she was 3 foot above the ground, and there was lightning bolts and sparks and flashes, and just she glowed, literally was glowing, and all she could say is, "Oh, I like that. I really liked that." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I guess I'm gonna have to try this again." Well, a few months went by, and I kind of tweaked my back, and the first thing I instantly thought about was the float center. So I called and literally couldn't get in for a month. Well, so finally on that second float, we finally got in, and I crawled in the tub, and it was amazing. No sooner than I crawled in the tub, the float was over. And I was almost mad about that. There's no way I got gypped, there's no way I've been in here an hour, and I just barely got in the pod. Well, literally, I'd been in there a full 60 minutes. I went dead to sleep in 2 minutes. And when I realized that I'd been in the pod for that full 60 minutes, I started examining my mind mentally and my body, and I felt completely different. And I guess if you have that real first float glow, that would have been my first real float glow, where it changed my life. It made me seek even harder of how I could bring this to other people. I float because it saves my back. I suffer from back pain and hip pain, and I'm practically an insomniac. My mind is working all the time, and I can't seem to get it to shut down, so I don't sleep real well. When I float, I sleep like a baby for the next 4 or 5 nights. It's been mind-boggling for me, because it's changed my life as far as how my sleep and the quality of my sleep when I'm resting and relaxing in my own personal bed. So I spent 2 years here where I really haven't floated at all, and mentally I find myself dreaming about floating, and it's my body telling me, "Hey, I know how to fix this." Magnesium #1 and zero gravity #2. In my opinion, when you see people come out of the float pod, after their first floats, second floats, third floats, and you see the changes that it makes in their body. It's Epsom salt water. What else is there? Epsom salt, magnesium sulfite, and water. So what else could it be that makes the difference in what it is that floating gives to each individual person? And the next really compelling question is, how is it so different for everybody?